Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today we're going to talk about a number of knives that I think offer a lot of value for in a lot of different niches within sort of the needs that exist for knife people. Now, these two knives are sort of to serve as an example. These are pretty much enthusiast directed knives. Okay, the average knife guy, if my friend across the street or somebody on the fire department asked me, what's a good, even a good big hard use knife, I probably wouldn't recommend the Formax, just because they probably never even heard of Andrew Demko. They don't want to drop $350 on a knife. Same is true of the Riot Tibia. If someone said, hey, what's a small, good, decent fixed blade, I'm not going to recommend the Tibia because it's a niche knife. It's a knife for the knife community, and most people are not going to be interested. Now, even probably, less people would probably be interested in this even than this one. But what we're going to focus on today are knives that I would recommend, or knives that I think are really, really good that could work for a number of things. Now, I've got this blank for a second because I want to point out, you could be watching this as a knife guy looking for your next cool option, but you could be watching it as a knife guy who needs a gift. You're trying to get somebody else into the hobby and you want to give them something useful and practical that isn't going to break the bank. Or maybe you're watching this and maybe, you knife guys could use this. You're watching this as a wife or a friend or a neighbor or a husband of a knife enthusiast, and you want to get them something good. Maybe it's a coworker, and you've got that $25 limit or something, or $50 limit or whatever it is, but you're trying to get a decent knife for a specific purpose on a budget. And so I'm going to go through a number of categories of folding knives here, and I think I've got a pretty good representation of some knives for different roles that are very capable and very affordable, or at least offer a lot of value. So let's begin with the first few knives that I want to touch on. The first one being one that you may or may not have seen my recent first impressions, but this is the CGRB Scoria. And we're going to call this first category just straight EDC knives. This is for the person who doesn't plan to put their knife through anything overly demanding or difficult, but just wants a decent knife in their pocket they can take out and cut some stuff from time to time. Maybe, cut some food up if you're out in the woods, or have something to cut a box open, or whatever the case may be. So these are kind of general use EDC knives that are pretty reasonable in price point. First up being the CGRB Scoria. Now you may be thinking the Feldspar should be here. It will, but I actually think of the Feldspar as a little heavier duty than this. But the Scoria is a good option, good steel, comfortable in hand, really, really slim and easy to carry. So if that's something you look for, this is a really, really good option. And of course, with those couple little titanium touches, it classes it up a little bit, and it allows it to be something perhaps that is a little nicer than you would normally, if you go to Walmart and buy something for $25, you're not going to get something usually with titanium on it. But this is a really nice option, and I think it would make a great gift or a great single knife for that person who just wants a decent EDC folder. Another knife on this list, and the two that I'm going to pick out here, this is the CIVIVI Brazen. And there are a lot of CIVIVIs that could go on this list. The Dogma would be another really, really good option. The Brazen's a little plainer than the Dogma, and therefore probably has a broader appeal. But if you're thinking of buying a knife for someone you are as a gift, you may not know their preferences. This is a pretty safe bet, and it's decent material. So 14C28N steel, great action, easy to carry. Again, fairly lightweight, a little heavier, I believe, than the Scoria, but still really, really nice. I've got a couple of other knives to mention here that I'll have to roll in some pictures of. So I'll just put these two in for now. But I think one of the knives that has to go on this, general EDC list is the Buck 110 Slim. They're FRN, they're very slim, they're very lightweight, they're very well put together, and they don't cost a lot of money. They're like $24, $25 maybe, but they're really, really cheap, like under $30, and you're getting a pretty decent knife. Now the 420HC steel is not my favorite, but with Buck's heat treat, it actually is not that bad. Another knife, if you're going to bump up that price point just a little bit, would be the Cold Steel Broken Skull. That comes in at like $85, probably around that price point. Still under $100. A lighter use knife, very slim, very easy to carry. Still has that great strong triad lock and really, really great option. I want to throw in two more in this first category, and one's going to be sort of a transition knife. The first one I want to throw in is the Sig K320. These are really nicely done, and they're not priced to, they're priced very attractively, and I think that's because they're marketing this to the gun market. And gun guys, they're broke. They're more broke than knife guys because guns are expensive and ammo is expensive, and so you can't offer them, they're not going to be buying that many Hinderers. Okay, they're just not, because they've got to use all that money for ammo. So the Sig K320 is a pretty decent option. It's like $130, which although it's not really super budget friendly, it is certainly not that bad of a price. And I've got one other knife that I want to throw in along with this that deserves honorable mention under the EDC, and this kind of transitions into our next category, which will be EDC plus, but some variation of the Mannix. The Mannix lightweight you can pick up for like $105, which is great. If you go to the full G10 with steel liners, certainly that belongs in our next category, which is what I'm going to call EDC plus. These are knives that are a little tougher, a little more robust, maybe for the person who is going to abuse it a little bit or use it for something a little more potentially damaging. All right. And let me say, well, you may be thinking, Kevin, I don't know how budget friendly that is. 100 and, I think the G10 version I think is like 130 or $140. But let me say this. All right, I had to buy some new winter boots for this year. I went with the Muck boots, and they were like $150. And why? Because I'm going to use them all the time. They need to be comfortable. They need to be reliable, and it's going to be, I'm more than willing to spend that kind of money on something that is highly useful to me and which performs well. And so you're going to get really good performance out of these. And I think, for many people, it'll be worth it to put aside that extra little bit of money and move up to something in that $100 to $150 range. Okay, so the Sig K320 and the Mannix, some version. This happens to be the Lockback, which is the least popular version. It's also my favorite version, but there are lots of variations of the Mannix too, and one of them may work really well for you in the EDC or EDC plus category. So now let's go ahead and move over to that EDC plus category, and I want to start off with a knife that was quite popular for a while. This is the Bird Raven 2 from, Bird is sort of the budget line for Spyderco. Big, thick blade stock, very comfortable, very robust knife. This is going to be a knife that, if you're someone who may abuse your knife a little bit, this could be a really good option for you, because these are very well put together, very robust, very reliable. And you can see I've got some gunk on there. You would think a professional like me would go ahead and clean up these knives before making a video, but there you go. Anyway, good option for something just a little more robust. And while we're talking about that, let's bring in a few others that I think are really good options. Obviously, the Rat Model 1 belongs on this list. This is, again, a knife that will really take a beating. Now, this one I've had for a long time, and it's developed a little bit of play, and I need to get rid of it. But, for just showing you guys on camera, no big deal. And frankly, for, without the carbon fiber, which is useless in terms of utility, you can buy these for like $35, $40. And so if it lasts 8 years, this is at least 8 years old, it might be older. If it's going to last 8 years before I need to replace it for $40, that's a pretty good deal, right? That's like $10 a year I've got invested in this knife. And so to throw it in the garbage now, it doesn't owe me anything. Another knife that I want to put on this list that I actually like even a little bit better than the Rat 1 is the Real Steel H6. This is such a heavy duty knife. I love the steel. 14C28N is an excellent steel, and this holds an edge. That's the big thing that I like better about this than the Rat 1. Otherwise, they're actually very, very comparable knives, but the 14C28N is probably my favorite budget steel, and so this one deserves a little more love, and it is really, really good. big knife, hefty knife. Really, this is a knife that inspires a lot of confidence, and one that I would easily recommend as sort of a harder use option. While we're talking about these harder use options, I've got a couple of more for you before we get to honorable mentions. The Feldspar, I feel like, especially I already had the Scoria out. But if I put these two side by side, you can see it's thicker blade stock. It's more hand filling. It's just a little bit more of a robust knife. So I put it under the EDC Plus category, where the Scoria I felt like was a little bit lighter use. Again, great knife, very useful, very robust blade. This is a fantastic option, and this happens to be the White Mountain Knives exclusive. So go pick one up if you're interested. Use my discount code Sharp Stuff. That'll save you a bit of money. But great knife, great action. Just one of the best things that CGRB has going. Another knife that really, doesn't get as much attention as it probably should is the Cold Steel Voyager series. These guys are like 65, 70 bucks. And these days they're built with AUS 10 steel, which is a great steel. Nice upgrade from Cold Steel there in that department. And yeah, if what you need is sort of a large, hard use tactical type folder, this is a really, really fantastic option. It's tough, it's durable, it's not super expensive, it's grippy, it's comfortable in hand, it's got the strongest lock available on any folding knife. It is just really, really good. So there's going to be a lot of cold steels on this list, by the way, because Cold Steel does do a nice job of offering some good budget-friendly options. Now, thinking of that, I've got a couple of honorable mentions for this list, and one of them is going to be the Cold Steel Recon 1. These go for, I don't know, like $130 something, and the American Lawman, and I think these are probably around there as well. So these are both a little over $100, but like I was saying before, it's worth the extra expense to get something that is just highly reliable and you'll never have to worry about. And for a lot of people, we've had this discussion and many other YouTubers have had it, that price point between $100 and $150 is where, the utility sort of maxes out. Beyond that, you're getting into fancier materials, rare steels, those kinds of things where there's other motivations pushing you to buy this outside of just purely practical. Okay. So, couple of really, really good honorable mentions there under the EDC Plus category. Now, the one category I don't have a lot of options in because there's some other knives that would probably fit, but the sort of gentleman's folder option, they're not a lot that stand out to me that really get me excited. This one is really nice. This is the Real Steel G frame. These are like $100, and that's why I put this in. There are not that many nice titanium frame locks that are classy and sort of minimalist and attractive, with materials that are this awesome at this price point. It's a pretty rare bird. And so I had to put this one in as a budget option for something high end and a little bit fancy. If you want something that, is classier, is dressier, that has some upgraded materials, this is a really nice option. And for $100, you're hard pressed to find a better deal than this. This is the Real Steel, again, G frame in titanium. The one that I might put close to this would be the Kaiser beg letter. They cost more, but Kaisers go on sale a lot and they'll go on some really aggressive sales. So I'll bet if you shopped around, you could probably find a beg letter in, give it 6 months or something. But I bet you could find one for under $150, maybe $125 or something like that. And at that point, you're getting a fantastic, fantastic folder. So that was sort of the gentleman's knife option for the list. Finally, I want to talk about fixed blades. All right. There's a really, really obvious pick. If you want, and this is a great option for a gift. It's a great option for yourself if you want something you can throw in a truck and forget about. This is the Mora Companion. These guys are available, almost everywhere. They're at a very, very affordable price point. Like I think these are like 15 bucks. If you want to go up to 30 bucks, you can get the Bushcraft, which is a little thicker blade stock and uh, may or may not have a fire steel with it. You could also, I have a Mora chisel knife, and I don't have it here because it's on my tool belt and it always stays there. And I can't tell you how many windows I've disassembled, how many pieces of trim I've pried off. I don't, okay, I will say this. I don't go out of my way to keep it super sharp because I beat the snot out of that thing. And so if I tried to keep it razor sharp, I would be sharpening it way too often. But I find that to be one of the most useful tools. It is just fantastic. And so yeah, your friend who's maybe not into knives, you're going on a hiking trip and you want to make sure everyone's got a knife on them, but you don't want to, you don't want to be giving out your expensive fixed blades. Moras are fantastic. There are a bunch of different options. They're widely available, and they don't cost a lot. And if by some insane, as I said, on the Mora chisel knife, I use it and abuse it and don't give it a second thought. I may be scraping tar off something one day, prying pieces of wood apart another day. I don't care about it. And if it breaks, it was $13. I'll just order another one. And so, I just love the Mora knives. And the one by far that gets the most use for me is the Mora chisel knife. But the more probably appealing one to a broader audience by watching this video, and that's why I chose to put this one in the video, is the Mora Companion here. Really, really great knife and very, very affordable. Again, check out White Mountain Knives. They did have some Moras the last time I was over there, and I think almost everything I've shown you has been available at White Mountain Knives. I've got an honorable mention that I'm going to use to sort of fill the screen, and then I'm going to talk about the other knife on this list. So I've got my Lion Steel M4 here. Before I talk about it, though, I want to mention the Cold Steel Master Hunter. I told you there'd be lots of Cold Steels on the list. The Cold Steel Master Hunter is an amazing, amazing knife. I ended up selling mine, but it's one of those knives that are on my list to buy again because it is phenomenal. For I think like 119 bucks, you get so much knife. The geometry is fantastic. The steel, that 3V steel, is a huge win. It's comfortable in hand. It's tough. It's easy to carry. It's not too big, not too small. It's kind of just the right size. There's so much good to say about the Cold Steel Master Hunter. And in terms of high performance fixed blades, it is like it's in a category almost of its own because it will outperform a lot of knives that you would pay way, way more money for. All right, now thinking of knives that will cost a little bit more, this is my Lion Steel M4. This one is an M390. I think so. The Lion Steels that I want to mention are the M4, the B41, and the B35. All of them are sort of carryable, almost EDC / outdoor used fixed blades. The performance on them is really, really good. And I do have to address one thing. So I get, every time I mention this knife, there's some complaints about the M390. I've had this one for a while. It has performed really well. And I'll just tell you, this knife I use to field dress my deer. I'm going to use it for part of the butchering. It's not ideal for that, but I'm going to use it for part of the butchering. And in field dressing, I couldn't get my arm and reach up to get the windpipe and the oh my goodness, esophagus. Sorry, guys. Anyway, in order to fit my arm up there, I had to cut a couple of ribs. And so I cut through, 2 or 3 ribs just to make it comfortable to reach in there. And guess what? I continued to use this knife to do everything else that I was doing, and it held up, and it's still got a nice edge on it. And so to me, cutting 3 or 4 ribs and still having a good edge is pretty decent performance, right? I can't complain about that. All right. Maybe, yes, maybe it could have cut all the ribs and still had a great edge or something. But for me, that's pretty darn good. And Lion Steel has a few knives. They're not always in M390. They also do Sleipner steel on some of their nicer fixed blades, but they are they're not a super budget option. They're still pretty affordable. The B41, B35, I think they're around 140 bucks. And so yeah, that's a little bit more, but for a really good fixed blade that you can really rely on and that is not only functional but beautiful, I think they're great options. So there you go, guys. Those are all of the knives that I can easily sort of get behind and recommend. We've covered a lot of different stuff, from sort of lighter use EDC stuff to hard use stuff and tactical stuff. As I was trying to say, there really is a knife for everybody. Whatever your interest level is, whatever amount of money you want to spend, there are some great options available to you out there. I know one of the arguments that I've definitely raised here is potentially that you spend a little bit more because the performance you'll get will warrant that. But even if you don't want to, there's some really good options. The H6, again, for like 45 bucks, you're going to be hard pressed to find something that performs way better, especially at that price point. So yeah, lots of great stuff out there. I recommend any of the knives that I mentioned on this list. Go check out White Mountain Knives. Go check out Southern Edge Knife Works. Both channel sponsors, both do a lot of good, and your patronage of them does help the channel a whole lot. Again, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.